and welcome to Linus Napoleonic Shipyard and this short battle report and a little bit different this time. Of course, similar system, we're using beat to quarters, but this is going to be an action in the Russo-Swedish wars, and for once I've made none of the ships in the engagement. So beat to quarters, I recently re-released that together with the original author, and you can find that in another video with the companion app that I actually recently updated a little bit more. So please take a look at that, and if you play and use it and find any errors, please let me know so I can correct them so that we get it working correctly. Thank you again, Barry, for writing this system back in 1980. I mean, we're still having lovely fun. We haven't really played a larger battle before now, so that's why we at this point decided to try some third rates. This is pure fiction, the ships are real, but the engagement is not. But it's supposed to take place during the Russo-Swedish War of 17, there was plenty of those Russo-Swedish wars, but the one from 1788 to 1790. This whole thing was fought with two distinct types of fleets. There was the high seas fleets of both navies, but there was also these archipelago fleets, like galley fleets, or hybrid galleys, like the Hemema and the Udema and all those hybrid sail galley type of vessels in the Swedish Navy, and also some in the Russian, some Seveks and so on. There was a couple of major engagements during this. There was the Battle of Helgoland, 1788, Battle of Öland, 1789, not to be confused with the larger battle that took place in the 17th century. And of course, Sverkersund, there was two battles there. So this is the setting of it. And the first ship in the engagement is the ship Dristigheten, which was a Swedish third rate, originally actually maybe a third, fourth rate hybrid. You have the stats of both ships here. So the Russian ship, the Vladislav, later captured by the Swedes actually, was your standard northern 74, you could say. 30-pound long guns on the main deck, or the gun deck, the main gun deck, and then you had the 18-pounders above that, and then 8 8-pounders above that, and then 2 large carronades. While the Swedish ship earlier, it was actually armed with just 24-pounder as the main armament, but they quickly found out that was too light. So at this point, when these ships encounter each other, she's armed with 26 36-pounder long guns as the main ornament, and then some 26 18-pounders above that, and a couple of small 6-pounders, some heavy bow chasers. I think we got it wrong in the start. I'm going to have to ask Marcus, but I think the Vladislav might have been supposed to have 18-pounders as bow chasers as well, and I see we were just having 8-pounder. It wouldn't have made a big difference for the battle, but we made a couple of mistakes, or mostly me, during this battle. What is lovely with beat to quarters as well is the way, and I've shown this plenty of time, the wind works. So we rolled for wind here initially, and it turned out to be a slight breeze, like the step above a full calm, which means that none of those two large ships, or any ship really, could tack. You could just wear, so no tacking through the wind. And we also ended up starting on opposite sides. We rolled for the compass we rolled at 32 points, but for the starting position we just rolled 8 points, so you can be north, northwest, west, and so on. So we ended up on two sides of the board, the Russian having a slight advantage in the wind coming from north by east, I think. We also on turn, and I'm going to get to that later, but we did miss that the wind we didn't think so, but it did turn on turn 10. Each 10 turns there could be a change in wind strength and also in direction, and it did turn. It might have turned the battle completely different. We missed it. We didn't figure it out until way later in the battle, and then it was like too late to go all the way back. So we ended up playing it basically with the wind not changing, and it was a longish battle with 22 turns. But the first turns here up until turn 10 is basically just spent maneuvering And the way B2 quarters works is that of course, if you read a rule book, you're allowed to measure where the wind is plenty of times during your turn, but we do kind of a hardcore mode where you're just allowed to measure your point of sail at the beginning of the turn, which means that you're not going to be able to, as you move, guess. So it's much easier to, if you make a big mistake, end up in irons, for instance, because you overcount your turn and everything. We feel like it adds a little bit of realism for us, or a little bit of more tactics to the actual planning. Beautiful models that Marcus made, and of course the system is measured in centimeters. We're using this clear see-through centimeter rulers. We also have a very long one. Now we're playing in Marcus' house, so I forgot to bring that one, but usually we have a long 1 meter ruler as well to measure the longer distances. Of course, some of those guns, like the 24 pounders especially, have very long range. We also choose to use the crew management that are optional in the game rules and also in the app here, where you have to assign crew to the gun decks and to sailing the ship. And if you get below a certain point, you might not be able to. Of course, a large ship like this have plenty of people to man one side of the guns. But if you go starting to take a lot of losses to your crew, you're going to end up having to watch out a bit with not being able to fire a full side or full broadside, or maybe not being able to sail the ship fully. And there are some house rules that we have in this, where this an incremental decrease in the maneuverability and the sailing power of the ship as you remove crew below the minimum for sailing the ships. As you can see, the ships started out really far apart. Many people, maybe they would find this boring and would just want to go straight to action, but half of the game of Age of Sail, and that's also another reason why I really like B2 quarters, is because that I think it simulates the sailing quite well. I mean, I know Barry, there's a lot of things he would like to do different, and he is still thinking about things, but for us this plays really nicely, especially at the 1/700 scale, we find. And this whole maneuvering, trying to maybe gain the weather gauge, or maybe just go drop the weather gauge if you don't fit, and maybe go for a leeward position, or like not a windward, but is it leeward? So that you're maybe maneuvering that way. And what happened here in those first turns, turn 1 through 9, is actually Marcus is clawing his ship, and he did have a little advantage starting out. He's clawing his ship further up, gaining more of a clear weather gauge here over the Swedish ship played by me, Dristigheten. This is the Vladislav. I think he did a great job on these models. He did quite a bit of research into the colors and so on, like this more ochre, almost brown, red, ochre, golden tone. Makes these ships look different than your typical British or French ships, and make them pop a bit. You see the Dristigheten is even towing a boat there. It's also a lot of immersion like this, and it's also nice to play with someone else's model sometimes. I mean, because they do things different than you. He doesn't spend the same amount of time with me as me with the rigging, but there's no need, because you're playing a war game, right? It's just me that does, or there's some more people in the world, of course, but I mean, I spend too much time on each ship, so I think he did great with this. And you can see here through the turns, I'm not going into our exact plans, but basically you plan it out, and as we're at longer distances, we just plan the whole turn, and you can fire at any point. Of course, we're almost running it faced directly, because if you fire at the end of the turn, it's not like you're going to be able to fire directly at the beginning of the next turn. You're going to have to fire at the end, or maybe stand over a turn, and then you can fire early, but so that you don't get an unfair advantage in firing. And we also did, since both crews were inexperienced, so if we were kind of firing simultaneously at the same time, of course that could be done. If you're not using the app, you just count it at the end of the turn, the damage, That's what the way you do it in Rus. With app, you're gonna have to count who's going first, and so we just roll a T8, and whoever rolls highest is gonna be the one that's gonna fire first. So on turn 10, Dristigheten is turning downwind and presenting its broadside and firing a full broadside at Vladislav. The range being so great, so there's a chance at this range of 30% in that. I'm going to work on that because it's not working fully as I intended it, because I don't want all the shot to go high, but as it is now, all the shot went high. So I was aiming low for the hull, but the whole broadside went into the rigging. I guess with an untrained crew that could happen, right? Also, especially at range. It's not very long range, but it's quite a bit of range. So on turn 10, Dristigheten is opening up the engagement, firing into Vladislav's reading. As you can see here, the end of turn report, there is no significant damage done, no sail is lost and so on. Of course, these ships are larger, so they have a lot of ship points or hull points or HVN, so that it will take a while for each sail to blow. You count like 10 sails for the larger ships, right? Frigates and above. So on this turn, we have both ships firing at each other, and again, all the shot here on this turn is going into the rigging. So Vladislav is firing here, as you can see, on Dristigheten, but the entire broadside is ending up in the rigging. So far no guns are lost on any of these two ships. So, and here the Dristigheten is returning fire, since the Vladislav was firing first. You see here, you can see I've added some stuff so you can actually in the log see the whole calculation, how it's calculating the range bands. I actually put in like a quick chart where you can see the ranges of the different guns as well, if you would like, in the app. And then you apply the damage, and then it tallies the damage on the opponent's ships, and automatically deducting any gun loss, crew loss, and so on. So you don't have to track any of that manually if you're using the app. You just let the app do it. And of course, we played 22 turns here, and 22 crew turns went quite rapidly. Of course, those first turns were also very fast because we were just maneuvering and not firing, so not a lot of time was spent thinking about that. So, and I ended up just doing this in photos, as you can see. Like usually I'll film the whole thing and so on, but I wanted a little bit of a quicker battle record. Of course, being me, I'm probably going to end up talking away here for a little bit longer than I'm expecting, but I hope at least with the photos it still can convey the positions and a little bit of the action. And of course I'm putting in the logs here as well. I could have put in our plans, because each turn, we plan it on paper, and as we get closer we're going to start planning it on phases. But I'm going to describe how it turned out, because there was a little bit more tactics going on as the ship closed a little bit closer to each other. But I'm going to explain that when we get here. Beautiful. Age of Sail gaming is such a nice thing, and you can see here end of turn 11, still no significant, nothing really big. There is damage, and it's counted, it doesn't show, but it's counted towards losing those first sails. Of course, that damage to the rigging didn't go anywhere, like get lost. Okay, so on turn 12, Dristigheten is firing first, and here you see this gunsmoke effect. I have a video up on how you can make those for yourself. These ships being larger, we combined them, so we combined a couple of them together to make each gun fire a little bit unique. And if you want to see exactly what happens on each broadside, the results and the effect and so on, just pause the video and then you can just see that screen and see what happens. But here's the first loss. This shot actually managed to go low, and you can see that Vladislav lost some of his gun and some of his crew, because I have it the way I have it in the app and in the house rules is each time a gun is hit or lost, the GDN is reached, there is a chance that some or all that crew of that gun might be lost, depending what how the gun was lost, right? Might be a gun exploding, or it might gun get hit and knocked off the carriage, or maybe the splinter, so just killing the whole crew there around it. So you see here, for instance, Dristigheten is hit by Vladislav, losing an 18-pounder long gun and 7 crew. So quite a bit of the manning of that crew was lost as the gun was lost. And this adds a slow trickle of crew loss. So you see 560 left on Dristigheten, for instance, and it tracks how many percent that is. So both ships are still at 99%. Turn 13, and we are slowly closing. So we're going parallel courses, traveling. I think we're still traveling quarter reaching. Maybe actually Vladislav was running before the wind at this point, I think. So I'm quarter reaching, and Marcus is running before the wind at this point. And of course, as you lose each 5% increment of losing hull points, or the PVN, HVN, hull value number points, you get to lose 1 SP. Both ships started with the same SP, being roughly equal in size. There was no initial loss of SP for any of the ships. So both started with 10 surrender points, but each time you lose one of those, there is a tiny chance with our house rules: a fire on a 1, a rudder loss on a 2 or a 3, and the wheel lost on a 4 or a 5. So there is a small chance each time you reach those numbers that you will lose something more, like a critical hit. Of course, that's on a T100, so of course chances are quite low of that happening. And of course, as you can see, when I was taking the photos, I have to beg your pardon for this, but I failed to take those zoomed out shots showing the whole board, which would have been putting all this action in a better, so you could see the tactics a little bit better. So, but you know, gun smoke is very attractive, so most of my photos ended up being of the actual firing between the ships. Happens, but I hope you can enjoy this battle report anyway, and you can follow along with it. So end of turn 13 here, and as I said, the ships started taking a bit of damage. You can see the stern. I think Marcus did a nice job. He's used to one of those warlord sterns, metal sterns, on one of the generic warlord game third rates, but I think he did a good job of painting that stern and making it look a little bit more like one of those Russian third rates. So turn 14, and both ships are firing. Now, since we're firing roughly at the same time, we roll a dice, and Vladislav won the dice roll and is firing first. So the damage is applied to the Dristigheten before Dristigheten is allowed to return fire, which it does here, and it was a mediocre broadside, very little damage done. Lost a 30-pounder long gun, 3 crew, and another smaller gun there. So some were knocked off their carriage. And that's each time you reach that GDN number, and I've explained that in another video how to count that, and you can look at that video about the rules and how you do it, and you can also download the rules, of course, for free nowadays. So you can give this a go yourself and try it out. Bow chasers firing. I made that special gun smoke, the one that Vladislav is having at its bow here. I made that specially as a bow chaser gunfire. I made it a little bit thinner and longer, a little bit new way of making it. And then also Dristigheten is firing at Vladislav, and it is not I think later on I maneuvered to do a bow rake, but it's not at this point. You see, this is off the center. It doesn't need to be a pure T in the way we play the rules, but roughly a T, or passing the T, to make it a stern or a bow rake. Yeah. So I mean, you can just decide that together with your opponent the way you want to play it. Looks very cool though, gunfire effect. And I also like the way I used this one as the cover, because I really like the way it looks. You see there's some loss, 96% crew left for Vladislav, and a little bit less for Dristigheten. Of course, Dristigheten started with a little bit less crew. Here you can see a wire, but it's fine. Turn 16, and we're firing much closer now. As you can see, both ships are getting much closer. And also, I was dropping speed. You can half your speed if you don't have to go the full length allowed by the system before firing your guns. So I deliberately chose to cut down sail here a bit to try to outmaneuver the Vladislav and get into a better firing position. And we're wearing each other down, both broadsides here. These guns, they are lost. Like once they're lost, they don't come back during the battle. So if they're lost because you're fighting fire, then one thing. But you see here, one SP lost and a whole bunch of guns. This was a little bit more effective. Of course, the range is closer. They're not great at firing any of these crews. They're inexperienced. And I think Sweden has 0.48 and Russia has 0.44 or 0.46, 0.44. So the gunnery is deplorable for both these ships. I mean, you need to be lucky to get a good hit. So turn 17, and again I'm slowing down even more, and I managed to fire first here, firing at the Vladislav. And another really good broadside. Not much crew loss, but a whole bunch of guns on that side. Of course, once you need to track that. If you're playing on paper, you need to track it. And of course, in the app you use track, you set which side are you firing from and to which side are you firing, so that you can find out exactly where the shot ends up. And if you're firing stern or bow, the shot can end up anywhere with the way we run the rules. So you might lose guns on the starboard or the port side, depending. Getting close to the side of the board here, and at this point we decided before the start of the next turn to just move the models, like because we're playing it out at sea, so and we want a larger sea mat, we just moved the models, like I think we moved it 60 centimeters into the board, both of them, keeping the same distance between the models. And here the Dristigheten had to make a turn, so and that's a little bit of a sacrifice, but I needed to do it, so it's wearing, and Vladislav gets a chance to fire off a pretty good broadside, and it was good hits. And you see a bunch of guns were lost. And this is it's not a rake, but it's a hit on the stern of Dristigheten, and it did lose a couple of guns. SP at this point is equal, and gun losses. Vladislav has lost more guns than Dristigheten, but it's even Steven still at this point. I mean, even Steven. I hope that's not weird. It's something I heard somewhere. But it's a very even engagement at this point. So once again, I think CMAT does a lot for the way the game looks. And so Dristigheten is having the initiative here, firing its broadside first. And again, a good broadside, 2 SP lost for the Vladislav, and a whole bunch of guns before it can return fire. And that's crucial, because then as Vladislav is returning fire, his broadside is slightly less. I think maybe it plays out better if you're playing pen and paper, because then both hits are coming at the same time, and you know, then you count the damage at the end. So there's not a real event, but of course you could have the one ship firing ahead of another as well. So, and here is at this point we decide this is a rake. It's a bow rake. Unfortunately, it didn't hit as heavily as I was hoping, but you see it's not completely on the T, but it's just slightly off the T, and the ship did pass the T as it was moving. So that's the way the rules work for us. Is so this was a rake, a bow rake, and Vladislav is again firing its bow chasers to very little effect. And you see here is turned into an advantage again for Dristigheten, still having 6 SP left, Vladislav down to 3. no critical hits so far. Turn 21, Vladislav did a little bit of a unlucky turn, or actually Dristigheten I was slowing down again, heaving to and managing to get into a position where I could fire and Marcus couldn't, and that's another very strong broadside. Vladislav being down to 1 SP at this point, and lost a whole bunch of guns on both sides of the ship. So you see the standing here. So Dristigheten still at 6 SP with quite a lot of crew and most of the guns, whereas it has lost the gun, but it's not as many as Vladislav. And this is the last turn 22, where Vladislav actually manages to fire first. I forgot to take a photo of that, but here's the Vladislav's long side, broadside, and it does 70 damage. So very little damage, still enough for Dristigheten to lose a gun and lose one of those surrender points. And then Dristigheten returns fire, and it's a average hit 155 damage, not great at that distance, but again the crews are untrained and they're not super trained, being Russian and Swedish, but it is enough for Vladislav to then lose its final surrender points. So this is the standing, and you see the app shows that the Vladislav strikes its colors at 0 SP, and this is the position finally of the whole board, and then we've moved them up towards the middle here, as you can see. And you see when we take photos or film, and we keep the table clean, but usually we're war gamers, right? So there is pens and papers and stuff strewn around there at points. It gets cleaner and it gets less clean, but at this point here I just wanted to show how it looked here at the end when we were into it. And here you can see how the ships look here at the end, and if you want to pause it, you can see the actual gun loss and everything, that the app actually tracked that fully, and automated tallying those gun losses and so on. I'm really happy with how it works. And here is the miss. We missed this completely. It shifted 4 points to the right. I mean, that would have been, I think, pretty heavily in Marcus' advantage. My maneuvering would have been much more limited. But we missed it. I mean, definitely not on purpose, and it would have been more fun to have a wind change. But that's how it is when you play this type of war games. Sometimes you get it done right, and sometimes you don't get it done right. We did enjoy the battle quite a bit, and as I said, we slowly moved up in sizes. We started out playing with unrated ships for B2 quarters, and then we had a battle that were very long, and that's before we were using the app fully, where we had these earlier frigates that, and you can find that here on the channel, that had a little bit smaller caliber guns, but still quite a bit of hull number. So it was a 6th rate frigates, or even a 5th rate, but the guns were very light, so they were like chipping away at each other forever. We actually had to split that into 2 game sessions because it took so long for us to play. Very enjoyable, don't get me wrong there. It was an enjoyable engagement, but it took us a long time to finish it off. And then slowly we've moved up in sizes. We had 1 B2 quarters between the Shannon and the Chesapeake, where my friend Björn and Marcus played, and I was just focusing on editing and looking, and it was also a very enjoyable engagement. Of course, larger frigates with heavier caliber guns, and it was a little bit quicker. And we've done some others, smaller sizes, bigger size, but we haven't really done ships of the line fully yet. So this is the first time we try the system. We've tried shooting, of course, and stuff, but not a full match. So now we did a full battle report using B2 quarters, the 2025 edition, with the companion app, having great fun fighting the Russo-Swedish War 1788 between Dristigheten and Vladislav, both Dristigheten hybrid 3rd rate, quite small 3rd rate, but with heavy armament. They must have really rammed those guns in there to fit all that stuff. And then the Vladislav more traditional 74. Marcus was going to give me the captains before I said, but I know that the captain of the Dristigheten at this point, and that he was called Pauke. If you say that in English, would be puke, because it's spelled puke, but his name is Pauke, so then you have that name right. I can't remember the name of the Russian captain, but of course it's all fictional. They've never really encountered each other one-on-one in this single ship action, but it's nice with this what if encounters sometimes, just to test out some pretty similar ships and ornaments and see who's gonna take home, and also playing different nations than what we usually do, like the Spanish and the British tends to be what we play most often. Since Marcus' fleet is Spanish and mine is British, we do have access to my brother's fleet, which is French, so we could play that sometimes too, but it's nice to try some other nations, and of course this is closer to hand, us being Swedish. It was very friendly of Marcus to let me play the Swedes in this battle. I really like those Swedish third rates. I think they're really cool. Dristigheten, beautiful ship, and I think again Marcus did a great job on it. Next one, I'm right now building HMS Sophie. It is a Sophie that my friend made and shipped with those 16K prints. It is based on the historical ship that Sophie was based on. Sophie is a hybrid. The fictional Sophie is a hybrid between Speedy, the ornamental Speedy, and the story of Speedy that you can actually watch on a collab that I had with Dristigheten just recently. It's out on his channel. Probably put a link to it here. And a Spanish ship. Right now the name eludes me, but I'm going to get back to that as I show the build video, because I did a full build video this time. I filmed the whole process on my old cell phone, hopefully mostly showing so that my hands are not in the way. I mean I'm kind of new to all this stuff. I don't have the setup that many of those pro war gamers or painters have, but I tried to film the whole process, and I'm gonna walk you through the whole build. I mean, of course, speeding it up, but also slowing it down at the key points, so you can see how I go from start to finish, building up one of those beautifully made from original plans hulls, printed in 16K with scratch built masts and all the footage detail, like the crew and then the rigging that I'm at this point right now working on. So I'm actually on the running rigging, so I'm close to ending up that build, and then I need to edit the video, and as soon as I have that done, I'm gonna have that video out for you guys to watch and maybe take inspiration from, and maybe make your own builds or of similar ships. But so and the caveat there is, since that ship was slightly bit larger as far as ornament go, because the Speedy has those 14 guns, but Vincejo, I think the original ship was called, had a larger ornament, and first I was going to fill in a couple of gun ports to make it have the ornament exact as the fictional Sophie, but in the end I want to use it in battles, and I might not always want to use it as the HMS Sophie, so I decided to keep the original ornament on it, so with those gun ports open. So the silhouette, the paintwork and everything is the HMS Sophie of the books, even with that large yard arm, but then with the ornament of the original hull that was the inspiration for the fictional ships. So until then, I wish you following seas and fair winds.